All right, let's jump to the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda one-stop Honda shop. Joining us right now is Chris Biderman from the Sacramento Bee. You can check him out there. You can also check him out on the YouTube. Chris is right on our YouTube page,
Right
youtube.com, Sactown Sports 1140. And talk some Kings with Chris as we get ready for NBA free agency starting on Friday. Chris, let's start here. Should we be prepared? Are you prepared for a big swing by the Kings on Friday?
Prepared for anything. If you're in this business of sports media, you gotta be prepared for anything. I think it sounds like, and I know other people are reporting this, that the Harrison Barnes thing is gaining steam, and so I guess that wouldn't really surprise me, given how much adoration Mike Brown showed for Harrison Barnes last year, calling him really irreplaceable at various points throughout last season. But the Kings cleared up all that cap space for a reason, I would think. So we'll have to see. But if they did bring back Harrison Barnes and signed Domantas Sabonis to an extension, I think that would certainly make sense. I also think there would certainly be questions about, are the Kings getting substantially better if that's the way they spend their resources this offseason. So I'm kind of ready for everything. I think the Kings are a really interesting team, given that they were the 3 seed, given that they did open up a bunch of cap space and could potentially get better. Whether or not they're a free agent destination, so to speak, remains to be seen. But they are a team that I think has a chance to make a substantial leap if they can acquire some pieces. But we'll have to see if they're able to do it.
There's been plenty of speculation via, reading the tea leaves or connecting the dots that, and a couple of them have even said that executives around the league don't think that Monte McNair makes the move he made on draft night to free up all that money unless he has something or someone in mind. Do you agree with that line of thinking that was made with a specific, we've heard Draymond, we've heard Kuzma, but with a specific player or plan in mind when they freed up that money on draft night?
I'm not entirely sure, because I think it's fair to say Rashawn Holmes in his contract, $12 million a year for a guy who's out of your rotation, getting him off the books is prudent, sort of no matter what your long-term plan is. So if you're going to have a guy on your bench who's making $12 million, who you're just not going to play and who doesn't fit the style of play that your new coaching staff is implementing, then it absolutely makes sense to try to move off of him and clear up space. I think what McNair ultimately, and I don't know this, the Kings are very, very tight-lipped, but I would say ultimately what McNair wanted was flexibility, and whether that's having a seat at the table when it comes to free agent negotiations with some of these guys, and just having the flexibility to make a pretty drastic move if one were to present itself, right? Like if somehow Cam Johnson sign and trade from Brooklyn becomes available, then the Kings do have the cap space and the trade exception to make something like that work potentially. So I don't know that there was necessarily one guy that they were targeting. I know a lot of people have been talking about Draymond Green. I think Draymond Green does make a lot of sense for the Kings on a few different levels, but also given what his price could be, I just have a hard time seeing the Kings making him one of their, 2 or 3 highest paid guys. I think certainly Vivek would love to stick a knife in the Warriors if he could. But I also, I think Monte McNair wants to be more prudent and probably looks at Game 7 and say, when our jump shooting really stagnated in the second half of Game 7, we probably could have used another scorer. And I don't know that Draymond Green necessarily helps them in that area as much as he would obviously on defense. So, I think, I even forget what your question is. I'm rambling so much, but I think I think the Kings just wanted to be flexible, and just you have to be ready to pounce. Like say the Clippers decide, and I don't think this is necessarily going to happen, but say the Clippers decide, hey, we're going to make Paul George available. Well, if the Kings didn't have that cap space, they wouldn't even have a seat at that table. They wouldn't even be able to pick up the phone. So at least with that cap space, they do have some flexibility. And if something were to become available that was unforeseen, they would at least be able to adjust and react instead of not being able to do anything at all.
Chris Biderman is with us. Chris, we're going to talk about a story, Rami and I, in a little while. from ESPN where multiple insiders say that the Kings need to make a big splash. Do you agree with that? Do you think this team needs to make a big splash, or bring back HB and maybe adding another piece would be enough?
I don't know that there's necessary, like, is Kyle Kuzma a big splash? Is Cam Johnson a big splash? I think that's sort of up for interpretation. I think the Kings probably need to make a move of that ilk to get better. I think everything, this is just my opinion, but when it comes to their offseason goals, we need to be better in the playoffs. And I think you can look at the rest of the West. The West was pretty bad last year. A lot of teams had bad seasons relative to their expectations. And I don't know that the Kings can necessarily bank on, the Suns are going to get better. The Warriors are probably going to get better than they were last year. The Clippers, if they have any semblance of health and continuity, they're going to be much better than they were last year. So I think, and Mike Brown said this a lot, like the easy part is to go from bad to good. The really hard part is to go from good to great. And given that the West is probably going to be better last year, given the Kings are going to come into this upcoming season with far more expectations, given that they are probably going to not sneak up on anybody next year, I think it's going to be a much tougher road upcoming for them, given all of those factors. And so if their roster isn't appreciably better, getting the 3 seed might be a lot more difficult. And so when it comes to being in the playoffs, obviously, Harrison Barnes was not great for the Kings in the playoffs. He was really good during the regular season at times. He provided a lot of professionalism and veteran leadership behind the scenes, and the fact he played in all 82 games is certainly commendable, particularly in today's NBA. But if they're in a game 7 situation against a championship caliber team, you can't look at them if they bring the same group back and say, no, they're more equipped to win that game this year. I think it would make sense for them to try to upgrade that spot. And frankly, I think if they use that cap space to just bring Harrison Barnes back and extend Domantas Sabonis a year before they necessarily need to, I don't know that that's necessarily disappointing given how successful last year was. But I think if you're trying to make the team better, you probably want to try finding another explosive scorer who could potentially get you 25 points in a playoff game. And we didn't see that from Harrison Barnes in the playoff series last year.
You led me right into my next question, Chris, which was, do you think we are going to see a Domas extension this offseason? Is that something that's in the works?
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Again, the Kings have been very tight-lipped. No one's saying much of anything. But it wouldn't surprise me at all. Domas Sabonis is a super important player for them. He helped change the culture. He helped unlock DeAaron Fox. He helps, Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter with his passing and his screening. He's absolutely key to what they do. But I would say, he probably wasn't great in the playoff series against the Warriors. And I know he got stomped on by Draymond Green, and that's certainly part of it. But he said in his exit interview after the season that he needs to be able to shoot with more confidence from the mid-range. And maybe that has to do with his thumb injury that he's going to be coming back from. But the Warriors were daring him to shoot, and ultimately Sabonis didn't really make them pay in a way that somebody like Nikola Jokic would, right? So and obviously Jokic MVP champion, it's unfair to put Domas at that standard. But when you're talking about maxing him out and giving him a substantial raise over the next 4 or 5 years, you can't have that guy be the player that other teams are not defending along the perimeter, just begging him to shoot, in my opinion, right? I think you need that guy to be able to hit those shots and to not be a liability offensively in the biggest moments of the season. And you can make a pretty strong case that Sabonis wasn't good enough for the Kings, particularly in game 7 of the playoff series last year. So I think he absolutely deserves another contract. I don't know, if I'm running the team, I don't know if I'm giving him the full max, if I'm giving him $45 million a year, particularly given how the playoff series against the Warriors went. But he's an all NBA player. He changed the culture with the Kings, and that's certainly commendable and certainly deserves its reward. Just what that reward is, I guess, remains to be seen. But no, it wouldn't surprise me if they did extend him and have some long-term clarity on his future contract status going forward.
Chris, great stuff as usual. We appreciate your time. Hopefully we have a very busy and fun Friday to talk about. Chris Biderman from the Sacramento Bee. We'll talk to you soon, bud. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you. There goes Chris Biderman. Again, he was on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda is your one-stop Honda shop.